10 years in, and the war still sounded like thunder that wouldn't quit. Olympus and Othrys glared at each other across a valley paved with broken spears, splintered shields, and the ghosts of giants long forgotten. The air itself felt tired smoke clung to the sky. Storms circled endlessly, and the cries of gods and monsters echoed across a battlefield that no mortal eye would have survived. Zeus had tried everything. Lightning that split entire islands apart, storms that stripped forests to their roots, waves that dragged mountains into the sea. And yet the Titans never flinched. They had ruled too long, their bones calcified with power, their patience endless. One evening, lungs burning, thunderbolt smoldering in his hand, Zeus admitted what no king likes to say: brute force wasn't enough. And in that moment, desperate and cornered, his thoughts turned towards something far older than even the Titans themselves. Somewhere deeper than death, deeper than time, something was waiting. Something so feared that even Uranus, the Sky Father, had buried it. And Zeus, desperate, began to wonder if unlocking that door was the only way to end the war. Part 1, the stalemate. Let's paint the scene. On one ridge, Olympus. Gleaming, radiant, young gods burning with fresh fury, their laughter brittle from exhaustion. On the opposite ridge, Othrys. Dark, jagged, dripping with shadow, where Cronus and the elder Titans sat, their eyes heavy with contempt and confidence. Between them, chaos. Not metaphorical chaos. The battlefield was a graveyard of half-finished worlds. Rivers boiled into steam. Hills collapsed into molten craters. Whole forests stood as blackened toothpicks after Zeus's storms. The bones of monsters, chimera, giants, beasts older than fire littered the ground like gravel. The Olympians fought with youth on their side. Cyclopus-forged thunderbolts glowed like miniature suns in Zeus's hands. Poseidon's trident churned seas and cracked land into islands. Hades, pale and grim, called shadows as weapons. But they were still the younger generation, children who had grown up hiding from their own father's hunger. The Titans had something far more dangerous: patience. They fought with the weight of millennia behind every blow. Cronus wielded his great sickle, its edge glowing with the memory of castrating his own father Uranus. Iapetus struck with hands that had shaped the bones of the earth. Hyperion's eyes burned with a light that could blind gods. Every dawn, Zeus hurled storms so violent they could flatten cities. Every dusk, Cronus answered with starlight sides that carved valleys into the world. Neither side could break the deadlock. And as years stretched into a decade, the Olympians began to falter. Their food dwindled. Their sleep vanished. Even immortals tire when hope feels like ash. The war wasn't a clash of armies anymore. It was a cosmic staring contest. And the younger gods were beginning to blink. Part 2, the prophecy. One night, when even Ares was too tired to brag about his wounds, the fires burned low. The camp sat in silence, gods and allies staring into the dark, each afraid to say what they were all thinking. We cannot win this. Then, the ground shifted. Soft at first, like the earth stretching after a long sleep. From the soil itself, she rose Gaia. Not summoned, not called. She simply appeared, as though the earth had decided to remind her grandchildren who truly ruled beneath their feet. Dirt clung to her hair, roots curled around her arms like bracelets, and her voice carried the calm weight of stone that had seen empires rise and crumble. She looked directly at Zeus, not at the others, and spoke a single riddle. Your strength is not enough. Free what your grandfather feared. No thunder. No prophecy written in fire. Just those words. The camp froze. They all knew what she meant. Every god had heard whispers as children of being shoved back into the womb of the earth because they were too monstrous to walk free. The 100-handed ones, the Hecatoncheires, 50 heads, 100 arms, a rage so raw it could unmake mountains. Uranus, their grandfather, had hidden them away at birth, horrified by their forms. Cronus, in turn, had kept them bound in Tartarus, fearing their strength. Now Gaia had made it plain. The Olympians could not win without the very monsters their ancestors feared most. The gods argued. Hera warned of betrayal. What if the monsters turned on them? Poseidon, ever pragmatic, said, better to risk betrayal than certain defeat. Even Hades, rarely emotional, admitted that endless war drained the underworld with restless spirits. And Zeus? He sat silently, the weight of kingship pressing down. His choice was simple, yet terrifying. Open the cage, or watch Olympus die. Part 3: Descent into Tartarus. Zeus went alone. Not as a crowned king, but as a soldier. His armor was bronze, plain and scarred. His thunderbolts dimmed, tucked at his side like tired torches. Tartarus is not a place you walk to it, it's a place you fall into. The descent felt endless, the air thickening into syrup, the light abandoning him. Even Zeus, king of thunder, felt the press of silence in that abyss. The bronze gates loomed ahead, carved with symbols older than language, guarded by giants who barely noticed time passing. They looked at Zeus, recognized something in his stance, and moved aside. No words, no challenge, just acknowledgement. The boy is desperate enough to try. He crossed rivers that had forgotten their own names, waters sluggish with the weight of memory. He walked across plains of dust where forgotten gods had once screamed. At last, he reached the cavern, and there they were, the Hecatoncheires. Imagine a cave so vast it had its own weather clouds drifting, rain hissing into the abyss. 3 figures bound in chains thicker than city walls. Briareus, Cottus, Gyges. Each body was a forest of arms, twitching restlessly even in sleep. Their 50 heads stirred, some laughing, some humming lullabies, others muttering in languages older than stars. Zeus approached, his voice carrying both authority and desperation. Freedom for service. Help me end this war, and the sky will be yours to roam. Silence. Then, Briareus' middle head laughed, a sound like continents shifting. The laughter rippled across all 50 mouths, and then into all 3 brothers. Deal, they thundered, their chains trembling. The cavern shook, not with anger, but with the promise of release. Part 4: The Unleashing. When the Hecatoncheires emerged from Tartarus, the world noticed. Each step was an earthquake. Avalanches cascaded from mountains not even near the battlefield. Rivers reversed their flow. Old forgotten gods stirred uneasily in their graves. The Cyclopes came with them, bearing fresh forged thunderbolts, bigger, heavier, hotter than anything Zeus had wielded before. These weren't weapons. They were pieces of the sun itself, wrapped in bronze. Zeus didn't announce their arrival. He didn't need to. Instead, he led the gods to the ridge and stood in silence as the monsters unfolded before the Titans. And for the first time in 10 years, the Titans hesitated. The Hecatoncheires did not charge. They unfolded. 100 arms each lifted boulders the size of castles. 50 heads turned, some singing lullabies, some growling war cries, others simply smiling. Then, the barrage began. It wasn't a battle, it was geology throwing a tantrum. Mountains flew like arrows. Rivers split and swallowed entire legions. Boulders rained like the sky itself was falling. Cronus tried to rally them, swinging his sickle, roaring for order. But order was gone. Zeus hurled thunderbolts that split the battlefield into glowing trenches. Poseidon drove his trident into the crust, sending tidal waves roaring even through dry land. Hades called up shadows that dragged Titans screaming into the abyss. But the true terror was the Hecatoncheires. One being was equal to 1,000 catapults. Titans who had stood firm for a decade broke ranks and ran. Some were scooped up mid-stride, flung through the air like rag dolls. Others were buried alive beneath the rubble of their own empire. By dusk, the valley was silent. For the first time in a decade, the war was over. Part 5. The Final Push. Mount Othrys lay broken, jagged against the horizon. The surviving titans, Cronus among them, were bound in chains and marched into Tartarus, herded into the very pit where the Hecatoncheires had once rotted. This time, it was their prison. Zeus sealed it shut with a mountain taller than pride itself, binding the gate with spells older than fire. And he left the Hecatoncheires as wardens, not slaves, not guards, partners. After all, who better to hold a prison than those who had once known its cruelty? The Cyclopes returned to their forges, their gift of thunderbolts complete.